Good afternoon, everybody. First, I want to apologize for not being there in person, but I think this arrangement would work as well. Today, I'm going to talk about the urban redevelopment and the regeneration in a very ancient Chinese city of Xi'an. First, you can get a first impression from the pictures in the slides. The first one is taken in the 2014, and the right one is taken by a German pilot in the 30s of the last century. As you can see in the table, Chinese urbanization is growing on a massive speed. The, the left one shows the urban population in the 1978, and the right one is showing the urban population in the 2000. You can see it almost grows 3 times much during these decades. And the third slide shows the average of the people housing square meters grows as 5 times as 30 years ago. And during these periods, there's a lot of high peak in the housing urbanization of Chinese cities. And we can see from the timeline of the Chinese urbanization starting from the 50s. There are 4 important periods during this time. First, we go to the Soviet mode, which we learn from the USSR, and then during the end of the 70s, we start to economic reform and go through the 90s. The Chinese cities grows with the economic booming, and the urbanization grows as quickly as very high speed. In China, since the economic reform in the 1978, the inner city of China benefits from the historical heritage and the traditional cultural undertakings, and gradually raise a multicultural mixed areas. Since the 1990s, its population to redevelop the historical areas as tourism attractions under the slogan "Establish the old as the ancient" as a vividly description. It may sound strange for Western scholars, but it is still the most common phrase in use during the practice even for now. However, this approach emphasizes the building themselves, but neglects the local residents and the business as the matrix of the culture. With the design and planning methods from the modernity, from the 50s until now, there are lots of buildings inside the city, inside the Chinese city, are already reached the design limits of the usage time. So they are facing urgently on the needs of regeneration for the next move. But in general, Chinese inner city is facing mainly 4 problems, which are lack of supporting policies and losses of cultural identity inside the city, and also the poor quality of the inner city urban space, and also there are very lacking of space inside the city. These are the major issues you can generally see in most of the Chinese cities. But what about our subject city, Xi'an? As we can see from the map, Xi'an is located in the very central of the China land, and it overlays with a lot of different historic layers. The colored area you see is the ancient cities, which are overlaid with the contemporary city now. This is the city you can see from now. The urban space and the landscape of the city has changed a lot since the 1990s, which is the time of the economic booming last century. As you can see from the picture, the right one is taken in the 70s, and the bigger one is what it looks like in the center of the city nowadays. Although the city's pattern and space has changed a lot from the traditional ones, but we can now see some very interesting urban transformation now in the old city core of the city. The first one is the residential beside the streets. They are slowly turning into some restaurants, and we can also see some other transformations into market space and shops, etc. So besides compared to the other cities of China, the city of Xi'an has its own strengths and opportunities when it comes to the urban regeneration of the inner city. For example, Xi'an has very historical open context and a very large number of local dwellers and activities happens inside the city. And also its self-organized urban transformation has already started. These are considered very good support and good signs for the cultural-related approach. So facing such an old city and so complicated situations, what do we do to regenerate in the city center space? So this presentation we propose to a cultural-led approach. We name it cultural-led approach. So what is the cultural-led approach? Cultural-led regeneration approach can be understood as a use of cultural projects to revitalize the economic depressed cities and regions. This can involve the promotion of art-based events and attractions along with encouraging the development of high-quality housing and retailing. The attraction of professional business to the area. Cultural-led approach is highlighting the value of the matrix of local culture and the actors to improve the physical environment and the reconstruction of the local cultural network. As we can see from the figure from the left, starting from the inner circle, which is the micro scale in the diagram, the ideal process should be the interventions from the public space and the streets or the neighborhoods, and give awareness of the local culture, and then expanding into the possible urban space and architecture in the districts. Through the macro level, of the linkage between the variety of players and actors in the process. Eventually, it would achieve the social interactions in the macro level. And the process could be undergoing mainly three important phases, which it shows in the figure on the right. The first one is the enlightenment in the neighborhood, creating the curiosity for the knowledge in the majority of the local residents, and the local entities and their characters could be identified. In the case study, the cultural entities include the local residents, cultural group, and the cultural facilities or the companies. And then the second step is transformation. The needs of the residents relies on space, cultural and facilities or companies, usually seeking profit out of the cultural consumption, and they may either play positive or negative roles, but this is why it needs to be guided. Then the third step to set up a common ground and possible strategies for the larger and wider contests. In the later slides, it was illustrate how the urban transformation taking place and for the regeneration with possible alternatives with a case study. So it works like this on this process map. First, initiate the projects, and then we do research based on the information and surveys we got. And then we design and try to develop ideas and inventions, whatever, to interact with the local people. And then we give a time to catalyze, to let the local residents to taking place by themselves, and in the end hopefully it will generate a bigger projects. So when the intervention ends, it's also a starting point of next bigger interventions. So we actually start the survey on the site to know about the activities of the people, the flows of the people, and the distribution of age, etc. The basic information that can help us to give general design ideas. We could find a specific site to apply our ideas. This is the very example of it. First, we locate our site and we do our studies to know the spatial and the different aspects of the site to know about its everything about it. For example, this one is in a corner of the city wall, and it's basically all surrounded by residential areas. But inside, you can find some very good cultural spots, which are the heritage site from the last century. And we start to mapping out the 300 radius around them. This is because of the walking distance for elderly and also for the child is a reasonable distance. And then within this area, we try to insert some interventions, either spatial, architectural, or it could even just be some events. And then we try to upgrade it to the larger scale into the walled area, and then hopefully it will start this process automatically all around the city. And during this process, the real key is really how well the projects are connected to the local residents and their activities and the cultural facilities. And to ensure this, we need to get as much actors as possible to involve all the actors and the possible stakeholders inside this process. And these are some interaction examples we are applying during the workshop. We start some exhibitions and discussion groups to get involved the local people, and we initiate or we encourage them to participate in the design process to have a very well connection with local residents. So we actually count on the cooperation of multi aspects from a solid foundation in participation and fulfillment of the urban design and planning. And actually many achievements have been reached in the process of cultural regeneration. And since we use this cultural-led approach to design the environment, there are at least three benefits we can get from this approach, from the environmental, cultural, and economical. Environmentally, we can avoid the destiny of the inner city to being gradually emptied from the activities, abandoned, and finally reconstructed to be homogeneized to the generic modern cityscape. And culturally, it's a way to this approach could help to protect the local historic and cultural medium as an integrity. And in the economical sense, a featured and attractive city center will bring the investments to build a beneficial development system within the city. So our objective is really trying to have a collective working method, not only architecturally but also socially and economically during the design and the research progress. So in the end, we can add different dimensions to our understanding of sustainability. That is all. Thank you. I hope with the slides you can understand better.